I don't mind telling you I feared those three-eyed folks, scary slasher flick. Talk about incredible revelations. Already knowing the story, you just want to warn him. Watch out for the plastic swords. And then cry, you have to be careful. Yes, and you must also watch out for the fire and the brimstone. Agreed. Let's roll that clip too. Here's one way the world ends. The backyard goes nuclear, as in most B-movie sci-fi concepts. The moviegoer is not necessarily meant to comprehend all the scientific details, as all the viewer knows for sure is a chain reaction involving commonplace materials results in a dramatic volcanic eruption. Crimson fire rains from the nocturnal sky. Director's note, shoot this scene through a lens or prism onto feeling toned print stock. We run for the house, reaching safety just ahead of the swirling lava and brimstone. Of course, radioactivity is still a major concern. How many curies of original experience can we safely absorb? The door won't hold back the lava for long. As the protagonist, it is my job to realize we must get away, but there is no place to go. It is happening everywhere now, nuclear war. So we all gather in the foyer to make our escape. I dress for the pilgrim's journey, slipping a necktie and overcoat over my pajamas. The radiation is heating up the house. It feels like the August sun. I see our neighbors in the street driving away to the hills, but my people and I, we have no car, no way of escape. We are left behind. The nuclear summer doesn't last long. The half-life visionary transformation must be very short indeed, for the scorching temperature quickly drops and the rain begins to fall. I observe this meteorological change from my perch on the depleted limb of a sycamore, an ideal location to study the next arrival. This is the world of fire, the old way of living. The commonplace world of solid things and comfortable, unchallenged theologies has been annihilated. I see that we must think differently now, start planning for a new life. Our immediate priority should be to collect the rain, the living water, the grace of the deity. Even as I experience this revelation, I see that others are already bottling the novel vintage. They too know we must save this divine gift for the future. We must begin our new lives, the lives of radiance, the lives that we dream for ourselves after the end of the world. That was incomprehensible, I say. My head is spinning. My secrets are escaping into the everyday. Is the young dark-haired girl in the peasant dress looking at me? Watch this, here comes the sponsor's commercial. A flock of iridescent funeral crows wheel across the clear blue sky, delighting an attractive couple while they enjoy a picnic in a field of billowing winter rye, golden retriever puppy, and the whistle of an unseen train. The man touches the woman's long hair and her eyelids flutter appreciatively. The disembodied sponsor speaks. Conquer the reluctant orgasm with climaxia. The first intravaginal paradisiacal locomotive. The screen goes dark. The stranger falls over on his side, laughing hysterically. "Oh, my deity," he says, "I don't care how many times I see that one, it just cracks me up sometimes. Well, it's as if there are never enough orgasms in the world. You're telling too much about us, me. But this is who you are, who we are. Didn't you know? How does this happen? What, Allison and me? Why do you want to talk about that right now? It's not even intermission. We've yet to crack the seal on the jug wine. And what of the flavored condoms? If I knew what was going to happen, maybe I could change. You can't, you won't. Tell me anyway, how do I lose her? You meet Cinnamon, please, if you're not going to believe me. I'm going to leave Allison for Cinnamon. I'm not an idiot, but you won't. You would leave Allison for Leanne. I think for a moment. You may be right, I admit. There is good news, though, the stranger adds. We do emerge from the darkness. How so? We emerge the only way available to us. We film our way out. There is a news release I have prepared for the world premiere for immediate release. Contact Strangers Rest Pictograph, P.O. Box 549, Burial Chamber, California. A Clockwork Mandala, The Making of the Armageddon Drive-In by Mark Leach. The art that results in epic films of the conclusion of time is in fact a difficult theft imposed by the movie maker upon himself to continue for hundreds of humorless minutes of extravagant technicolor footage to amplify a dream that in the ideal case can be conveyed in a small quantity of cheap videotape. This is truly a waste of celluloid. In the event this should someday be read by a scholar of Latin American literature who is a stickler for attribution, I should acknowledge that the idea presented here is actually derivative. I am channeling Borges now. While the movie director may yet wish and hope to one day deliver the envisioned vision. The improved process must be to claim that the movie is already a major motion picture, in a theater near you, and then the director may present a well-considered yet economical commentary, perhaps a brief making-of documentary, on the newly animated creation, and, or as a moral issue, this approach is more notably and incapably decayed than that of true creative labor. Nevertheless, I have on occasion submitted myself to this decay, creating entire cinematic dramas that exist only in my imagination. So it is with Stranger's Rest. In the intimidating state of affairs of the earth nowadays, when members of the populace start to observe that all is at risk, the interior cinematic dream flies further than the kingdom of worldly associations and authorities, and on its paradise into outer space and the stars. This is the realm where the monarchs of individual destiny, the deities, long ago made their home. I speak to others like me, those who are compelled to live with the chronic existential dilemma, even members of the populace who would by no means have considered that a spiritual difficulty could be a grave subject that worried them individually, are starting to pose to themselves some basic existential questions. Beneath these situations, it would not be in any way astonishing if those parts of society were who ask no questions of themselves in the waking world were called on by the interior cinematic dreams, by an extensive legend gravely supposed to be true by a number of people and discarded as ridiculous by an additional group. Such a personal calling comes to mind. A book my mother showed me when I was a boy, a slim paperback from her childhood, pages yellowed and brittle with age. A dream dictionary. I don't remember much about that little book. It was a sort of guide for divination, I think, for helping you determine the course of future events. Pretty common stuff in the first half of the last century. In her church-going home, though, I suspect it was regarded as a mere novelty item, but I don't know that. I thought it was the real thing, and I couldn't believe my good fortune. This was a treasure, a book that would tell what your dreams meant. What your dreams meant. Then I grew up, and I dismissed the childhood treasure. There was no unifying global pattern. Dreams became meaningless, insignificant occurrences. I stopped believing in these faraway fables, in their impossible forms and conditions. And yet I now realize it is not necessary to believe. The film director is not a creature gifted with a liberated and rational vision of his own individual belief. Rather, his personal goals are overshadowed by art, which becomes aware of and realizes its intentions through him. As an individual, he issues personal decrees and makes personal decisions and sets personal goals. But as a film director, he pursues an elevated way. He is the communal being, a means of transportation to and a shape of the comatose supernatural existence that is not actually the foundation of all humanity. And so it is that I have committed to film my novel tale, An Illusion of Happiness. This tale is best understood while on high, giddy flights into the abstract, one of my king of the world trips. I am susceptible to a certain racing of thoughts, a sense that I am somehow onto something seen only by me, though my Egyptian third eye, of course. Through my Egyptian third eye, of course, the sky turns different color, the big dome of heaven ablaze in the multi-hued shades of indulged compulsions. I am dizzy with the superimposed light of my own odd, eccentric convictions. If only I had migraine auras, so I don the mask of smiles, my preferred attire for engaging the practice world of apparent normalcy, and I write my little thoughts. I am authenticated. Then the inevitable nightfall. Metaphors crumble under the impossible weight. The screen goes black. The projector is out of film. I have outdreamed myself. Illumination becomes illusion. It is all hallucination now. One more magical broken symptom. I am left to wander the dark emptiness, chasing spectral notions, and the stranger who is me. Now the stranger is on the big screen, seated in a crimson wingback next to a roaring fire and an ascot under his crushed velvet smoking jacket, and a crystal brandy snifter in hand. A leather-bound book with gold-edged pages lay open on his lap. Good evening, the televised stranger intones. Tonight, on the third eye, we continue our series of castration, nightmares with sodomization of the muse. This is a dream I had while I was still married. The circumstances, magnetica. I ask, yes, magnetica, it is a good dream. People will think I'm demented, afraid of vaginas. You cannot stop people from thinking. But Allison, I recall an idea expressed by Nicholas Roeg, the director of The Man Who Fell to the Earth. He suggested that a cinematic creation is is more than the documentation, incredible revelation. It is a sentient being. As the cinematic creation is being filmed, it becomes aware of and embarks upon a unique and personal existence. The director of the epic film is much like a race car driver, ready to accelerate into the warm flesh of desire, but in this metaphor, all of the driver controls, the steering wheel, brakes, accelerator are ineffective. The cinematic creation cannot be made to behave in a particular fashion. Behavioral control is the way that leads to death. In college again, in the bedroom of your on-campus apartment, it is daytime, maybe morning, a Saturday. You believe you have a girl in your room. She is sexually willing. You are not seriously interested in her, but you are interested in her willingness. The two of you begin to take off your clothes. Beneath her outer garments, she is wearing a sort of black body stocking, very tight. She grimaces and writhes violently to shed it, like a snake exiting its skin. You cannot help but notice that she is no beauty. She looks tired, with flattened, deflated breasts. You take off your shirt and, still focused on her sagging condition, hold in your middle-aged stomach. Your enthusiasm is lagging, but you remain grimly determined to proceed. After all, you are still interested in her willingness. But first, she says, we are going to do the Mattel Barbie speak and say. She brings out a talking children's toy but can't get it to talk. The ring on the end of the pull string is missing, so she gives you a pair of surgical retractors which you are to use to grasp the string. You attempt the maneuver but fail. Instead of grabbing, you cut it in two. You try again, but the result is the same. You take another look at the retractor. This time you see it is actually part retractor, part scissors. She takes the instrument back and tries to. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she holds the speak and say between her knees as she works the retractor. She has no luck either, but you notice that she is carefully pulling the shiny steel handles of the retractor out of her vagina. Only the blades are fully visible. You are chilled to the core by this terrible itch, but before you can do or say anything, you hear the automatic garage door opening. Panicked, you run to the door. Sure enough, your roommates have arrived. They see you standing in the doorway. Oh, hi, you say. Sorry, gotta go. You slam the door and run back to your room. You want the girl to leave. You do not want your roommates to know what you have been up to with Mrs. Barbie speak and say. It is too awful to think about. Fortunately, the girl is busy dressing, so you close the bedroom door and go to the den to intercept your roommates. You find the room is filled with people. Your roommates plus the ROTC friends. Everyone is in military uniform. They have been on some sort of training exercise and inspection. Exhausted, they all fall on the floor together in a sweaty heap, and then they begin to pull out heretical sacraments. We tested clean, now we can take the sacraments again, one of them explains. He peels the plastic wrap off a tampon-shaped object and shoves it hard against his nose. Some things are better left unsaid, I remark. No wonder Allison divorces you. You can't hold in the truth forever, but you could have tried. Small things have a way of being big things when you neglect them. Have you already forgotten about Missy? Oh no, I remember. The door to the laundry room prison of Missy. I really should let her out. It's been days. But when I open it, there is no little dog. I am confronted by a Bengal tiger. How did it get there? I don't know, and there is no time to wonder. I go into the garage and close the door to the house behind me, but still I am not safe. I see the tiger has gotten through the door, and it is in the garage. It is in the garage with me. I scream loudly in a ferocious way. I am apparently convincing, because the animal jumps back into the house. After it leaves, I see that the door that I thought would hold this creature back has an enormous gap at the bottom. Plus, it has been repaired with pieces of plywood and not very substantial. So I decide to take a side door to the outside. This door has also been repaired with plywood, and I realize it will not hold back the tiger either. My only hope is to run. I find myself in a typically subdivision of the 1970s. I turn right and run down the sidewalk, which gently curves to the left. In the sidewalk, I come to a parked bike, which could help in my escape, but I do not take it. That would be stealing and cause even more problems for me. Also, in the middle of the sidewalk, I come upon a tall cylindrical object, perhaps 6 feet high. It reminds me of a bit of a crayon standing on its flat end. Is it a weapon? I do not know. I reach the end of the street, arriving at a larger thoroughfare. This road appears to be Big Stone Gap in Duncanville, my hometown. Across the street, children are playing in a field or perhaps a park. There are many bikes parked there, but again, I do not take any of them. Instead, I turn right and continue running. It occurs to me that the tiger will be able to track me by scent, so I decide to leave the sidewalk. I run on the grass a short distance, thinking this will throw him off. Next, I come to a park, and sitting by the road, I see a woman with her child. I run over to her. She has a cell phone, so I ask if I can use it to call the police, but she makes the cell phone call herself. Yes, there is a problem here and my cousin needs help, she tells the dispatcher. I'm amazed that she knows me, believes we are related. I don't even recognize her. No, I am never going to forget that. Want to watch some more? I've had enough castration fears for one night. The screen goes dead, but I still don't get it, I say. She's not even all that hot. Who? Cinnamon. The stranger stares at me, slowly shaking his head. You know, sometimes I just can't believe we're really the same person. Director's note. Now we come to the gratuitous sex scene. While the stranger and I watch movies at the Armageddon drive-in, Jack is letting his sleek dog run. He is heading into Stranger's Rest to another cafe where he will penetrate Tina's teenaged membranes in a steamy hot shower episode. This scene even manages to advance the plot. Come to think of it, the sex is really not gratuitous at all. It's necessary to the story, so you would do well to pay attention. Perhaps you and I could watch from the back seat of the Cutlass. Pretty. Tina in the shower, Tina naked in the shower, sex with Tina naked in the shower. Quietly unlocking the deadbolt, Jack slips inside the little apartment where Tina lives, above another cafe. He steps out of his shoes, eases past the kitchenette of 60s avocado green, through the little living room of gold-shaped carpet, just big enough for an ancient and inoperative console TV and a vinyl sofa with duct tape on the arms, and into the bedroom. Tina is standing with her back to him, unhooking her bra and dropping it to the dresser. The mirror over the dresser is positioned so Jack can just see the front of her torso, smooth and perfect skin left peeled and exposed, nothing left to shed but her bright red lipstick and panties. She puts her hand on her hips, begins to slide them down, and then we see Jack. You bastard, she says, a heart-thumping outburst that instantly switches from fear. What is a man doing in my bedroom? To anger? What the hell are you doing? She says, futilely trying to gather up her errant breasts and slim teenage arms. Jack notes her failure, and his attention locks into the right nipple, a bulging eye peeking out at him from behind a peach-fuzzed forearm. Her naked body is still an exciting image because he knows he was her first. He is gazing upon territory never viewed by any man before him, except perhaps a licensed physician. Hi, he says. Hi. Is hi all you can say? Jack admires her blazing eyes, angry and wild, just like the night she threw the lamp at him. Yes, this is going to be better than Corvette, but first there were a few formalities. To dispatch. Sorry, I just wanted to surprise you. I didn't mean to scare you. You bastard, she repeats, quieter now, snatching the comforter off the bed and wrapping it around her from neck to feet. You've got a lot of nerve. I'm sorry, he says. I should have called. What can I do to make it up to you? Of course, he knows this is the wrong thing to say. As soon as he says it, rules have been violated. He hasn't allowed enough time for anger, pushing too soon for resolution. It was an amateurish move, something Mark might pull, and now he will have to move his game piece back another space on the board. But as it turns out, this is the least of his problems. How about explaining this? She hisses, throwing open her jewelry box and coming up with a Polaroid picture. She flings it across the room, catching Jack in the chest. He looks at the picture and freezes. It is a picture of Cinnamon, taken during a wet t-shirt contest the previous week. The picture was snapped about 2 seconds after the t-shirt was no longer an integral part of the contest or her attire. Even under the present circumstances, Jack can't help noting that Cinnamon was a very healthy-looking girl. What are you looking at her, checking her out? What, are you looking at her, checking her out? Is that what you're doing? Tina asks, the tendons in her neck bulging and taut as she leans into her, saying, would you just rather be with her? No, baby, no, Jack insists, flinging the picture into a trash can beside the door. I don't even know her, you bastard, she fumes. Bastard. It's true, I swear it. That picture is not even mine. It was just in your pants. Maybe somebody planted it there, some naked whore you don't even know. No, I don't mean that. I know how it got there. You bastard. How I was holding it for a friend, then we forgot all about it. That's so lame. Who's the friend? Her eyes boring into him. There is no room for hesitation. He has only one chance, and no time to figure the odds. He speaks the first name that pops into his head, which is, of course, Mark Leach. Mark? What's he doing with a picture of a naked girl? He met her at a primal temple, a place he was doing a story on. He didn't want his wife to find out. Had he the luxury of another moment's thought, Jack would surely have made up a better story, because of all the lies that he could have spun about that picture and the girl in it. Mark was the least likely male to inject into it. Mark making time with a topless dancer? He might as well have said might as well as said Mr. Rogers. It was so preposterous, and yet there must be some genius working in that fraction of a second it takes him to pull up the name because Tina is buying it. Mark's having an affair with that woman, she asks, her eyes gone round like saucers. Oh no, they just talked, you know, he was interviewing her, Jack explains, quick to capitalize on her curiosity as well as diffuse the story. He needs her to believe it isn't his picture, or he doesn't want her asking Mark about his new topless girlfriend either. It was like she meant it as a gift to him for being so nice. Oh, I see, Tina says softly, letting the story soak in. He is a nice man. I don't even know that woman, he adds, and she buys it. I'm sorry, Jack, she says, almost crying with joy that she has not been deceived. Jack rounds the bed and they embrace. She dropped the comforter, of course. After waiting a decent length of time, about 10 seconds, he slides his hands down her back and slipped eager fingers inside her panties. She takes them off and drops them to the floor. Oh, I've gone and left the shower running, she says dreamily, looking behind Jack at the open bathroom door. Jack turns to see the wet cloud of steam billowing out of over the top shower curtain of the shower curtain and disappearing in the chilled air. You better hurry before all the hot water's gone, he says. You'll wait for me then, she asks, ducking her head and stepping back from him coquettishly. Just an arm's length, so he would be able to see her naked body. She knows he likes looking, and she has found in recent days that she had lost her shyness and quite likes it when he looks. Just don't take too long. After she closes the bathroom door behind him, and Jack can hear the splash of the water change as she stepped under the stream, he retrieves the picture of Cinnamon from the trash can. He looks it over again. Yes, she is very healthy looking, but at that moment, standing in view of Tina's underwear and within earshot of the shower that is washing over her, the body in the picture seems somehow diminished. It is as if, by allowing so many men to gaze upon her for money parceled out, one ragged dollar bill at a time, Cinnamon has turned her asset into the most commonplace of commodities, not like Tina. He slips the photo into his pants pocket. This pair he definitely wouldn't leave for her to wash, and opens the bathroom door. The roar of the shower fills his ears. Steam fogs the mirror. He quickly sheds his clothes and pulls back the brown plastic curtain. This time Tina is not startled to see him. He steps over the side of the tub and she presses her breast against his chest. She knows he likes that, but instead of taking her in his arms, he takes her by the shoulders and turns her around. Oh, so he wants that again, she thinks, and a wry smile creeps across her face. As if choreographed, she dutifully bends over at the waist and grabs her legs just above the ankles. Jack grasps her by the hips and pulls her towards him for the penetration. The DNA delivery organ slides in smooth and surely like a well-oiled cam. The water thunders down her back, turning her pink skin lobster red. She turns her head slightly, cocking an admiring eye up toward Jack as he watches the water spill down her neck and over her full open mouth. Ah, yes, a film committed to the full frontal, yes, of an 80s wet dream. I wished I was in that one. Don't we all? Ah, a vision of the night. The symbolic language of it leaves everything to the mind. In the shower stall, ectoplasm swirling down the grated drain, a pulpit for the boredom of the genius, personified by a well-oiled cam. Flesh in a wet, dark, dull, hot day, listening to the doomed banjos, penetrating membranes, and plotting other cliches. No, of course, you are right. The concept is predictable. Yawn, poorly sculpted fluff. We deal quite nicely with the offer. Who needs the money? This is me. It was Mark, then. I would determine that being myself is the correct role for me. In the full motion picture, I would try to ignore the world, lost in my ridiculous words, and shrug. Trust me, it looks good on the widescreen. Wow, now it no longer functions. For years, I have been repeating an inner process, a process revisited throughout the rest of the film, that the basement is flooded. This is the resting place of the forgotten, abandoned gold. Somehow it talks. Is God communicating my destiny, or is that all the President's men, together in the future outward events? Revelation, life, marriage, the origin of those transmissions may not be the blind seducing blind. Lying on a pile of pebbles outside the abandoned church, it dreams of the divine, weirdly engaging. Whoa, a new life form. We can work in some conflict too, see? I tried society, but communicated with the deity above the concrete and rational. We are for him, and yet a message is not funny, boring. How about the Stranger's film's a stately musical, call it sometimes known In ancient times, men were the apocalypse. Let Jonah run away from Christendom concept, the keeping of life from perishing it. For the deity does speak now in dreams, but balance out the heavy with fluff. A dog delighted, a languid blood bath waltz that has the feeling of a dream. The idea is to have him look for himself some night. Why? Because an army of scum-sucking, violet, pizza-eating dinosaurs is out to get him. In this movie dream, we can all identify. We all know for ourselves. We are drawing to it. And the deity, but I do not feel that I am myself lost in this erotic place. See what I mean? Blockbuster. The Oscar goes to success, an encounter with Christendom. The fish will bring him to the last question, one final masterpiece, as good as The World is Dead. What a story. In the full motion picture, we are true to ourselves. We can be proud. Then we move to the Catherine Zeta-Jones in bend over spandex. Haha, it means I am a seer. But here is the irony. In fact, I cannot dream. The message isn't any less me. Dreams as are a nightmare of thoughts, giving me time to freely, i.e. those of ourselves, where we understand the story of a loving, forgiving everyone, like me, the reborn in my ridiculous words, and we speak of a journey of revelation. In a sense, we all do. Such a dream film has not been seen since childhood. We're quoting them. It has been all the same since the beginning of the process, a process of death and the contents. We can no longer deny the still man. I am the rational over the dream phone presented as, what is the phrase I am searching for? The total denial of reality. Morning at the Old Fellows Cemetery, the script calls for Father Bypass to finally reconsecrate the unmarked Catholic graves at the back of the property. He's not a very good actor, I tell the stranger. It was because of the whiskey, he explains. I should have used prop whiskey, colored water. Anyway, he's really perfect for the role. He's not even a priest. He is now. I modified the script so that he is ordained by a dead pope over the viral DNA dream phone. But he's not motivated by conventional theological concerns. No, he's just doing this to make Cowboy Roy feel better. And of course, he is here to advance the storyline. We have a very important plot point in this scene. My role in this scene is to report on the reconsecration ceremony. After much encouragement, Guy has finally decided he will take 10 to 12 inches for the Sunday neighborhood extra. And I'm sending Special K to get a photo, he adds. I arrive for a few minutes early so I can retrace a recent tour given me by Cowboy Roy, a private tour of the Pioneer-era resting place. But as I round the curve on Ottinger Road that leads to the front gate, I realize that something big has changed. The level mowed field of tidy graves has become a steep hill, and grasses, weeds, and thorny brambles have taken the headstones of the tidy, well-maintained Pioneer resting place. Just inside the gate, Heather Jacobs, the cemetery's volunteer groundskeeper, crouches beside a tall monument. He is gathering up the brittle remains of a plastic floral spray. Going to be another hot one, he remarks. He rises slowly to his feet and wipes the free-flowing sweat from his forehead with a crisp white handkerchief. I should have got started a little earlier, beat the heat. Hatcher is oblivious to the inexplicable change in terrain. In fact, he just barely notices the item parked behind him, a giant logging trailer. It looks like ones I've seen in East Texas, the piney woods, but instead of carrying a load of freshly cut timber, it bears 4 panels of rough pine logs lashed together with thick vine-like ropes. What's this? I ask. It's a clock tower. It's supposed to be erected outside the cemetery, but the face of the clock will face the outside. He looks at the trailer and scowls. You think that's a mistake? I ask. Of course it's a mistake. It should face the cemetery, but no one's bothered to ask me. He scowls again and walks toward his house across the road. I got to get my mower. This place grows up so fast nowadays I can't hardly keep up. Alone in a cemetery, that's really the best way to explore one, all by yourself, so quiet and peaceful. I retrace the steps I'd taken with Cowboy Roy a few months before. Epitaph for a former postmistress of Stranger's Rest. Any mail today, Miss Ida? An angel-topped obelisk marked for the final resting place of Elizabeth Murphy, Cowboy Roy's great-grandmother, a row of graves belonging to relatives of Clyde Barrow, the same one who had been visiting kinfolk in the area that fateful Easter Sunday morning when he and Bonnie Parker murdered the highway patrolman on Dove Road off Texas 114 outside Grave Pine. But don't write that, Cowboy Roy warned me. Folks around here still don't like to admit they were related to an outlaw. I revisit the little iron fence containing a massive red cedar, the long neglected irises that almost never bloom, and various lichen-stained tombstones delineating the family plot of Morgan Gibson, a member of the Peters colony that settled the area in mid-19th century. Cemetery records showed it was the site of the cemetery's earliest burial, the unmarked grave of a boy who died of spotted fever in 1856, just shy of his 2nd birthday. And a short distance away I reread the oft-quoted inscription on the marker of one of the old fellow's cemetery many infant burial plots. I don't know why I was so soon done, when I had hardly been begun. A few minutes later, a procession of 3 vehicles leading the way is Cowboy Roy in the Bevomobile, followed by Father Bypass and the stranger in the Little Deuce coupe, and the constable in his Toyota bubble top. By the time I reach the bottom of the hill, the stranger is directing his cameraman and sound crew, while Father Bypass unloads a set of matching black vinyl cases from the open rumble seat. What's that, holy water? Cowboy Roy asks. Just some equipment I use, Father Bypass says. He crouches over the largest of the cases, flipping up heavy brass latches and opening the satin-lined lid to reveal what appears to be some sort of optical device, perhaps a telescope or camera. His fingers take inventory of a long cylindrical canister with rough crackled barrel, a black rubber eye cup, and lavender-tinted lenses set like a jewel in a heavy nickel mount. These items and others each reside in their own velvet-lined cutouts. What are you going to do with all that? Roy asks. Just take some readings, Father Bypass says. Then he opens a second case, revealing what appears to be a metal detector. The constable didn't like the look of it. I don't know about this, Sam said. You got to have the permission of the cemetery to board before you can do anything. You can do any excavating. I won't be turning any ground, officer, since there aren't any markers. This is just to help me better identify the location of the graves. Satisfied by the answer, Sam offers to carry one of the cases. Cowboy Roy leads the way up the hill along the little dirt path. I fall in beside him. We walk past several rows of headstones, then stop at the edge of an open expanse of grass. This is the old Mexican section, Cowboy Roy remarks. We found the calf over there, near the tree line. I didn't know Hispanics settled this far north. Father Bypass says they didn't. They were here with the railroad laying the tracks. See, when they died, they buried them here at the back. But you wouldn't know it because nobody ever bothered to mark the graves. They was mighty poor, you see. We all watch as Father Bypass readies the metal detector, plugging in a pair of headphones and twisted a knob midway down the handle. Apparently satisfied, he nods to himself and begins to slowly sweep the detector back and forth over the invisible graves. Suddenly remembering he is not alone, he addresses the crowd. This could take a while, he explains. I'll let you know when I'm ready to give the blessing. Meanwhile, Cowboy Roy decides to show us what's left of the calf. I dragged it over to the trees, he says. It's pretty much rotted away, just a heap of moldy bones now. But when we arrive at the spot, the bones are gone. In their place, the body of a freshly killed calf, eyes half open and milky white, abdomen split open and crudely sewn back up with a strand of barbed wire. A star has been carved into its side. They did it again, Roy says, just like before. Devil worshippers, all right, Sam remarks. Must have had one of them black masses. They probably did the sacrifice right here. Can you imagine it? Right here in our cemetery. I figured this day would come, Cowboy Roy says. There's a whole witch's coven up here in Ponder. Probably a bunch more we don't even know about. What's this world coming to? When Special K arrives, he tries to take some preliminary shots of Father Bypass, but Cowboy Roy insists that first he must photograph the calf. The sheriff's department will need that for evidence, right, Sam? Roy asks, but since the constable is not on particularly good terms with the sheriff or anyone else in the county government, he just shrugs. To hell with them, he says. Special K doesn't mind. He sets himself to the job, screwing a squat looking lens into the body of his camera. Roy decides to fill in the silence with some small talk. Why they call you Special K? The photographer looks at Roy, then gives me a quizzical look. I shrug in outward mystery, but cringe in inward guilt. Special K does not know his own nickname. He thinks he is Franklin Nopes. Just another member of the Attitude Adjustment Bureau. What makes him special? For one thing, he spends the bulk of his workday energies on non-photographic endeavors, such as operating the Bureau's soft drink machine and honor snack box. His other nickname is Mr. Radio Shack because he sells personal computers he assembles from components acquired cheap flea markets and warehouse sales. But mainly he is special because when he does not find time to take a picture, there is no telling what the image the negative might behold. Special K is the Register's first surreal photojournalist. For instance, there was a time he shot the front yard of a disgruntled Bedford homeowner who had been cited on numerous occasions for his overgrown lawn. Special K had stretched himself for this one, laying down on the sidewalk so he could shoot the house through the San Augustine. When the picture emerged from the dark room, it revealed a lawn of giant grass, each blade with the width of the front door, as tall as the house. The photo never appeared in print, but we kept it around for entertainment value. This time, though, Special K does not bother to stake out a surrealistic angle. He doesn't even use a light meter. He simply positions Cowboy Roy behind the dead calf and takes a moment to focus and snaps the picture. Then he looks at me. "You going downtown for the meeting?" he asks. The meeting, called by executive editor Libby Wright. This all-hands meeting is to be the kickoff presentation of the paper's year-long editorial project. At 2 p.m., Libby will unveil her big deal, a high-profile, community-oriented project that will focus the paper's resources on a single broad-ranging topic. At least there will be refreshments. Wouldn't miss it. So where's the priest? I point to Father Bypass, who is still using the medical detector. He's looking for the graves, I explain. Shouldn't be too much longer. He squints across the expanse of freshly cut grass, says, "Looks like he's using a Siebel 9110, Special K observes, and it looks like he's modified the receptor coil. Think I'll check this out." While Special K pesters Father Bypass, Cowboy Roy leads me to the back fence line to identify the one grave we'd been unable to reach on our previous tour, a grave located in an isolated spot cut off by a spring flood. Even though Cowboy Roy knows the cemetery well, the grave is still a tough one to find due to thick bush. "Ah, here it is," he says, pointing at the broken headstone. "Elijah Homer Lay, the last horse thief, hung the county." According to local lore, Elijah was strung up in 1906 by Justice Posse, or Truth Squad, depending on who is telling the tale, whose members had fortified their resolve with spirited drink. Over the grave towers the skeletal form of a dead tree, the same one from which Mr. Lay is said to have hung. They left the body there, turning in the breeze, for 3 days and 3 nights, Roy explains. Then my great-grandfather cut him down and buried him. He also bought the tombstone, and he had it engraved, "Gone but not forgotten." That was a common epitaph for horse thieves. I kneel down to examine the inscription, but the headstone is blank, no inscription. The constable comes running, sweat pouring from under his hat. He looks at the marker and shakes his head. "They're all this way," he says. "Not a word on any of them. Nothing inside them either." The stranger adds, "It's a key part of the next 10-minute plot arc. You'll need to see this for later." A child's grave, the small patch only turned marked with a simple white cross sitting on the mound of sandy reddish soil, is a teddy bear, and next to it a dead leafless bush covered in colorful bows and ribbons, a family story I recall from childhood. We do not despair for the dead ones, the stranger says, but for our own isolation it terminates us. Our fear is not before death, however, but before life, difficult, pain-splendid, adhering tightly, squeezing life out of ourselves. The transformation leaves us helplessly adrift on a sea of death, plugged into the oxygen containers and IVs, prepared for a satin-drawn coffin. We are a template for the human condition, arms folded like bat wings and lips stitched together in a silent scream. Father Bypass stands over the grave, an odd machine in hand. I recognize it from the black case he'd opened by the road. He peers into the black rubber eye cup, now attached to the cylindrical canister with the rough, crackled barrel. The mauve-tinted lens is screwed into the other end, the cold nickel setting white with frost. Bose, Einstein, condensate scanner. Father Bypass explains new process, same technology as the gaseous and liquid movies, the stranger adds. It records tales from the collective unconscious, or, if you prefer, myths. Static crackles out of a little speaker set into the side of the canister. Father Bypass slowly turns a small knob near the eyepiece, and a voice comes into being. "This is the wild dream come up from the grave which we fill so prematurely. We are waking up from the big bliss trip, the upsucked inclinations, absorbed passion and purpose. The suicidal intention does not speak of a desire to die, rather to disassociate with yourself. Separated from the fragile ego, the heat of death is formed at a too young age, a defense unit against further betrayal. Tormented with illusions and self-imposed limitations, our magical birthright is revealed. Father Bypass hands me the scanner. Want to take a look? I put the rubber cup to my eye, and a sepia-toned image comes into focus. It is Clark Caring standing in a Texas backyard. Under a grey winter sky, all is dead, no green anywhere, save for a few clumps of rye overlooked by the milk cow kept in the barn behind the house. A typical winter day in Waco, Texas, circa 1953, but there is some non-seasonal color, bright ribbons tied all over a leafless tree, upside down in the back plate of Jewel Pose camera. Clark Caring knows all about his grandfather's ability to turn the world upside down. When he was 4, he remembers climbing the stairs to Poe's studio in downtown Waco, the part that wasn't consumed by the tornado of May 1953, and a simple wooden box draped in dark velvet. He took Clark's picture, and afterwards he led the boy to the back of that speed graphic. Let him look through the lens. The studio was upside down. Clark thought it was hilarious. How could his grandfather do such an impossible thing, overriding the laws of the universe? This was magic. Having seen Let Me Love You about 100 times, it doesn't require much imagination for me to see that ribbon-bedecked tree, that cherished Poe family heirloom, through the upside-down world of the photographer, a magician who captures a little piece of the world in his box and saves it on a piece of clay-coated paper. Did he adequately capture the colors of that contrived scene? I don't know. What I do know is that he tried, and apparently was close enough to succeed that he was afraid someone might steal the magic from him. So he sent himself a letter via registered mail, documenting in the vaguest of terms his discovery. A major new development in color photography, utilizing double reversal film exposed through a lens or prism. According to Clark, his grandfather never made any money off the invention. The process was never put into production. No documents survived him, no evidence of his creation. But I like to think that he succeeded, at least on the level of metaphor. He colored the myth. This is the interstellar journey of the extraterrestrial personality, pushing its way up into sunlight, a lonesome prairie sod rustling up and down across the ancient burial mound, a worn-out blanket. 10,000 images flash before me and turn to grey, oxygen deprivation due to a severed hand at my throat, and the smell, circa 19th century, dining accommodations and clammy outerwear bearing the pointed stink of unhealthy mental, a nonsensical heap reaching to the heavens, smolder gas of an equine lynching, bitter and hard exclusive waste, blotching pallid layer of noons decomposing phobias, fillets inspired by sluggish aloof passions of terrified petrol, an ashen blaze and distorted screams, the flavor of metallic text grasped in mandibles returned from the deceased ghost, pangs of deletion, flicker rhizomes of conventional organizations declining, similar to deceased biographers in the dim lane of mauve chocolate twilight, tainted with decayed metallic stink of cesspit chatter, lost in the golden-haired coronas of an auto bicker lamps, shattered xenon tubes laid bare. Don't be alarmed, the stranger says. This is part of the movie making too. Picture a SF Wild West concept based on the legend of Martian spaceship crash in 1897 in Aurora, Texas. I remember hearing about that story when I was in elementary school, I remark. It was a big feature in the Dallas Times-Herald. They had a photo of a gravestone which had a picture of a spaceship. That's right, the legend is even alluded to on the historical marker at the Aurora Cemetery, where the Martian is supposedly buried. But in this story, the hook is that Aurora wasn't the only town around here where a spaceship crashed in 1897. Strangers Rest had one too, complete with a dead extraterrestrial that is buried in an unmarked grave in the Old Fellows Cemetery. Cowboy Roy is not impressed. I've never heard that tall tale. That's saying something, because I'm the town's main tall tale teller. The reason you don't know about this is because the Aurora crash gets all the attention. The stranger explains. You see, the story was reported in the Dallas and Fort Worth papers, which live on in the microfilm stacks of the public libraries, but word of the Stranger's Rest crash never Rest crash never made it beyond the town's limits, so it just didn't get the publicity of the Aurora incident. You like? Pretty, I say. The movie is set in modern Stranger's Rest, where the dead space alien comes back to life during a re-blessing of the ceremonies. Catholic townsfolk observe a strange creature burrowing up out of the ground. It is the size of a man, but an insect. Townsfolk watch the creature crawl up an old cedar tree to shed its exoskeleton, revealing a pair of iridescent wings, in other words, a gigantic cicada. Indeed, the alien has already split open along its back, and a set of deflated wings plops out of the slit. That's one ugly-looking space alien, Roy says. We hired one of the best special effects men in the business, the cameraman adds. Came all the way from the Zeta Reticuli system. At least that's our story, the stranger adds. This alien film is but one of many I have directed. I am today as the sculptor Marini was in the years following the Second Earthly Conflict. I am today as the sculptor Marini was in the years following the Second Earthly Conflict, but instead of boys on horses, my art is about extraterrestrial insects. So if someday you look back and view my alien films of the previous 12 years chronologically, you will realize that the townsfolk panic progressively advances. But they are immobilized with amnesiac fear and resemble statues instead of living creatures who would most naturally draw back or head for the hills. That is because I submit that we are nearing the conclusion of time. In every film I attempt to convey a sense of intensifying horror and defeat. In this manner I strive to express the final step of a terminal legend, the legend of the conquering champion, of the rationalist creature of merit. Pretty, I say. Thanks. Anyway, the Black Ops division of Ozono has already caught wind of the resurrection alien and is even now attempting to capture it as part of its broader conspiracy to take control of the United Nations and create the world's first privately owned and operated deity. In fact, you'll notice the man sitting on the trunk of the government-looking sedan, parked outside the cemetery gate. We all look to the road, and sure enough, a newcomer has arrived. I wrote him into the script as a ufologist on the Ozono payroll, a humorous takeoff on the real Waking Worlds research group known as MUFON. The stranger continued. I even have a copy of his initial report, which I have based on an actual MUFON report from a site survey in nearby Aurora. Preliminary site survey of Stranger's Rest. A year after our site survey of Aurora, Texas, Naguo has returned to the El Camino extraterrestre, aka Texas 114, to investigate the little township of Stranger's Rest. We are here to report that the outcome of our investigation is rather strange. As we meander through the town, we find a mix of new high-dollar home subdivisions and old metal trailers, freely roaming dogs, and a tired-looking, mostly empty downtown anchored by the remains of a crumbling rock saloon. An old man in an antique caddy with long horns mounted on the hood, nice disguise for a perp on Gorilla drive-in movie theater detail. Hey Seb. Drive-in movie detail, the theater detail, tells us this sandstone structure is the only building here that still dates from the cowboy and cattle drive time. He then directs us to the town's Boot Hill Cemetery, where it is believed by some that an intelligent insect from outer space was interred a century past. A brief dashboard survey reveals an extremely tidy, superbly maintained site, but no alien grave. We were told there have been more than a few out-of-the-ordinary bits of metallic items unearthed in the vicinity, but that was years ago. They were sized and impounded by the armed forces and never seen or heard of again. But perhaps the most credible evidence we have become aware of while investigating Stranger's Rest are the numerous visual rumors of a former armed forces presence. The town even contains the ruins of a miniature Second Earthly Conflict era military-type airfield, with roads arranged in a characteristic air-based style. We are told that indications of the sod runway and concrete apron can still be found on the site of the old Highway 114 drive-in theater. Note, this 1950s-era outdoor cinema has been out of business for many years, but we can still see the old screen and speaker poles poking through the underbush. For what reason would the armed forces of the 40s desire to operate such an installation in Stranger's Rest? Inspired by the nearness of the city of Fort Worth, we make the mental connection that the wreckage from the Roswell collision cover-up was airlifted straight to Carswell AFB. Imagine it, those famous dead aliens and their craft were studied and hidden just a few miles south of here. Chance? Quirk of fate? Fluke? Not to our way of thinking. We submit that the U.S. government has operated an extraterrestrial research facility here since 1897, when it began to study the remains from both the Stranger's Rest and Aurora crashes. That operators clearly continued for decades right into the second earthly conflict. Perhaps the operation even continues today, hidden away in the antechambers of some underground bunker connected via high-speed pneumatic tunnels to Carswell, which is now called the Joint Reserve Base, a name perhaps reflective of the armed forces' joint effort to reverse engineer an alien spaceship. What better place to cover up such a facility than a seemingly obsolete and abandoned military facility drive-in movie theater? We, the dedicated researchers of Naguo, are on to this evil cabal. We shall continue to research for answers. We are now on the El Camino Extraterrestre. That ain't no secret Martian research facility, Cowboy Roy says. He's talking about the old radar base. And in fact, Cowboy Roy is correct. Later I will research the site and discover that it is listed in the National Archives as the Stranger's Rest Marine Corps outlying landing field. It seems that in the early stages of the Second Earthly Conflict, the Marine Corps had an amphibious glider program at nearby Eagle Mountain Lake, and they built a satellite airfield in Stranger's Rest. The 1,200-acre facility had a sod runway, control tower, a glider, a hangar, mess hall, and enough barracks to house 750 Marines. By the time it was ready to use, though, the Marines had cancelled the strange program. Later, they installed a radar station for night fighter training flights out of the Eagle Mountains base, but that didn't last long either. Stranger's Rest Field was shut down for good at the end of this war. If you go to the site today, the runway and old buildings are long gone, but the roads are still in place. The street signs say nothing like Tower Drive and say things like Tower Drive and Runway Lane. I talked to one man who built a 5,000 square foot North Dallas special on the hill where the control tower used to be. He said, while putting in a swimming pool, they found some practice bombs filled with bone white chalk, but no underground bunkers. After the giant cicada wings dry, it flies off into the billowy clouds of summer, and the crowd disperses. Sam and I are the last to leave. You keeping the bad guys out of town? I ask. As a matter of fact, I helped chase down the bank robber last week. I'd heard nothing about a bank robbery. I asked which bank, and the constable named one in Rome. That's the most robbed bank in the state, he says. That's pretty exciting. You catch him yourself? Nah, but I had him on the run. He started out on 156, but then he just disappeared. The sheriff's department was setting up roadblocks all over the place. I responded on the radio and they sent me way out on Seven Hills Road. He was coming my way right before they stopped him, so it just tells you that constables do a lot more than just serve papers. We're real lawmen. Sounds pretty exciting, all right, I repeat. You going to write about the giant insect, he asks. I don't know. My editors don't seem to like that kind of story. That's okay. There may soon be an even better story for you. How so? Are we off the record? I hate off the record. Why agree to hear a story you can't write? Only if we have to be, I say. We do. I agree. I've got an informant who says there's going to be another sacrifice. You know it for real? I mean, you know for a fact that the first one was an actual satanic sacrifice? Yes, sir. Got the forensic report from the sheriff's department yesterday, and an informant tells me another ceremony is in the work. When? I don't know exactly, but it'll be sometime in the next week or so. So the sheriff's department will be staking it out? Oh no, the constable says, smiling. No, they don't know about it. The informant is mine alone. That's why lie, it's off the record. So, you're thinking your informant will give you a heads up? And I'll lie in wait, and when they show up and begin their ceremony, I'll jump out and grab them. That'll make some headline. Couldn't hurt come election time either. Yeah, I thought of that too. So you want the story, an exclusive? You'd wait out there with me and see the whole thing. But I have another thought, I wonder. You think this is the real thing? I mean, maybe it's just a bunch of kids playing like they're devil worshippers. Maybe they listen to too much Ozzy Osbourne's. Is that it? Maybe. This new generation, they stay plugged in for days at a time, looking for on-beam primal goddesses and getting stoned on spore. Okay, but that doesn't make them devil worshippers. Listen, no law enforcement official in Texas has ever made an arrest during a black mass or whatever they call their infernal rites. You want to write that one, or should I call the Sunrise Bulletin? Don't even joke about that. I'm not joking. I want that story. You got it. All I ask is you spell my name right. Of course, the constable pushes notepad and pen on me. Write down the numbers where I'll be able to reach you, he says. A beeper would be best. When the word comes, there may not be much advance notice. Satan worshippers and strangers rest. I am unconvinced. Despite the constable's confidence in his informant, I assume the so-called Black Mass will yet turn out to be a bunch of teenagers pumped up on illicitly acquired beer and the modern equivalent to Black Sabbath's Paranoid album. Still, I will put Jack's cell phone number on the notepad just in case the call comes when we're at Plato's Palace. Lost in teenage memories of Duncanville High School, a hot summer night, peeling away sweaty clothes in the back of a 1970 Cutlass convertible, ecstasy and guilt merge in a communion of strained membranes, salty flesh, and bodily fluids. I close my eyes and see the innocent lips and virginal breasts, the spinning constellations of stale DNA and shimmering saliva, and then the shuddering rush of elation and moral defeat, of bliss and angst, a draining sensation of distinctive shame, a gliding snail-like past tables of milky white and clipped fins, cold skinless creatures, lined up soldier straight, body bagged and headed for the pitchfork and the flames. Wish I still had my old Cutlass, I lament. I feel a need for a gonzo road trip. Yes, we need some Hunter S. Thompson fear and loathing action, Jack says, and I know just the machine. Yeah, my old Cutlass, the black vinyl V8 powered time machine. I should never have sold it. No, it lives, man, it lives. Saw it last week at this place over on Mockingbird near Love Field. All they sell are muscle cars. They've got a couple of 442s, but they also took a trade on a plain Cutlass, silver with black interior, everything original. Are you kidding me? My old car? It's identical, and the guy said if I put down $500 deposit, I can borrow it for a weekend. Get it, man, get it. A fear and loathing road trip. How long had it been? 5 years? No, wait, longer than that. It was the summer after we graduated from college, a high-speed run south to the coast, to Corpus Christi. We arrived at dawn on Malachite Beach, the final stop on North Padre Island before the untamed vines and tangled seaweed and undiscovered wreckages of Spanish galleons, pieces of 8 strewn across the dunes, and rattlesnakes and unexploded artillery shells and sea monsters. We played the Rolling Stones' Some Girls album non-stop, a Boys of Summer soundtrack for our perfect, not yet damaged lives, so respectable, and of course there was the tequila and beer, a whole ice chest full. We were sure the alcoholic and good times would last forever. I'll pick up the Acapulco shirts and Sagan mirror shades, I volunteer. Make mine those wrap-around Spanish ones, like the ones the stranger wears. Speaking of him, we'll need chocolate mysticism for 3, at least some spore. I'll steal some from under the Corvette's sofa, and I'll get the mezcal, the kind with the worm. Checking out my old desk, it's been months since I was farmed out to the Northeast Bureau, but it appears maybe someone is still anticipating my eventual return to the downtown operation and business news. My desk is just as I left it. The editorial assistant has been forwarding or tossing most of my mail, but I also see she has honored my parting wish that the business staff maintain my collection of the George Report, a monthly listing of Tarrant County's commercial real estate transactions. I have every issue for the past 5 years. Yes, I am an obsessive compulsive, at least when it comes to the real estate beat. and I find a copy of my last annual performance appraisal, given to me 6 months late last fall. A perfectly acceptable review, and yet my eyes automatically fall on the words I found, and still find, most offensive. Mark does an excellent job of researching the county deed records and finding newsworthy transactions, and yet, through his heavy reliance on the public record, we see that he is not discovering major transactions until after they occur. We challenge him to offer to further develop personal sources in the local real estate industry so he can report on major transactions before they occur. How was I ever going to get local real estate agents to tell me about deals before they close them, before they were deals? Nobody's going to take a risk on losing a commission, not even to help out a nice guy like me. I was doomed, but when I shared this concern with one of the older reporters, he just laughed and went straight to the heart of the problem. Quit going to the courthouse. You're working too hard and just making yourself look bad. Next time one of the real estate buddies tells you about a deal, write a story. Then when they ask you where you got it from, you can honestly tell them you got it from one of those personal sources you developed as requested in your last review. They might even give you a raise. He was right. I never went to the courthouse again, and my editors never even noticed. It was as if my career was over. I felt as if I had followed the same career arc as Clark Herring. Being a truth doctor is a lot like being Ard-Nassak. Yes, I and others of my profession were much like the prophetess of your ancient pre-science mythology, the superior being whom no one ever supposed true, and yet those whose divinations were forever confirmed by reality. Like pre-science prophecy, truth doctoring is a gift. It is the gift of knowing the necessary steps to coolly and without passion avert, or at least diminish the impact of, a media crisis. This is indeed a great gift. However, in my case, it came with a great curse, the curse of being powerless to persuade senior executives of the need to accept those necessary steps rather than pursue the folly of their own hot, passion-filled, and therefore doomed strategies. If they run the story, they'll tell them we'll sue. Tell them we'll only grant an interview if they agree to let us review and approve the story before publication, or we'll sue. Tell them no comment, and we'll sue. For those of you who are not up on your ancient pre-science mythology, Ard-Nassak died at the claws of Artsemnetilk, who slew the prophetess over the broken exoskeleton of her legal mate. Artsemnetilk actually had nothing against the prophetess. She had committed herself to the murder of her legal mate Non-Mega, just arrived home from his triumphant victory in the Froth Hills War, for killing their own larvae years before in exchange for a charm against the Frothian winds, as phrased by mythologist Hilde Nitildema. You see, Artsemnetilk had nothing against the prophetess Ard-Nassak. She just got in the way. I died in the hands of Edward Milton. Back in the day, Edward served as the director of life extension technology at Valuosity Life Planning Inc. We knew him for his extensive technical prowess. He was even a life extension professor at the Management Information Foundation, as seen on TV. Unfortunately, Edward had no knowledge of or feel for how to actually run a business. Even so, it didn't stop him from doing whatever it took to become company president. So you see, Edward Milton had nothing against me. I just got in the way.